we're going to place in our boning, okay? There is, in your notes, you'll see that they have a couture technique and they have a basic technique. The couture technique is a little bit more involved in that you are adding different types of additional support with inside the bodice. I'm going to teach you the simple couture way, if that makes sense, because this way it requires less of those additional pieces. And I think depending on what kind of garment you're making, this is going to be the way you're going to go about it mostly. Depending on what kind of dress you're making, again, you'll use that much more advanced couture technique. But this is what you're going to use in most of your dresses, especially if you're making dresses that are a little bit more lightweight as far as the style and don't require such excessive backing, which makes the top a little bit heavier, but beautifully done. It does sit by itself. Okay, so what I do is I open up my lining, press open all the seams, and then I take that marking pencil and I measure 5/8 down from the princess seams and those back darts that I open, not the side seams. You can do it at the side seams, but it will also interfere with the waist stay that you put in there. So it's kind of up to you whether you decide to do it. You can actually do it and stop right before the waist stay so that it doesn't interfere with that stretch and that pull. But you're gonna go 5/8 down from the top and mark. Just make a little dash. And then you're gonna go 1 inch up from the waist. So remember, 5/8 from the top down, 1 inch up, and you're just gonna make little dashes like I've done. And why you're doing those dashes is because if you put the boning in all the way top to bottom, you're not going to be able to create that seam that you're going to use to connect the main fabric. You're not going to be able to put the bottom of your dress in. It's going to interfere with a lot, so you have to make sure you do these markings to let you know where to stop the boning. Okay, what type of boning are we using? The most commonly used boning, there are so many kinds, there's so many ways to put in boning, but the most commonly used piece of boning is this plastic sort of lightweight boning. It often comes curled up. You can buy them by themselves, as I often do, or you can go into your local fabric store and they sell them by the yard. I recommend buying just a bulk, for yourself, because sometimes when you're buying them by the yard, it's a lot more pricier than just sort of buying a roll for yourself, and it just lasts longer instead of having to keep running sort of back and forth to the store. So it just looks a little like this. And this just works the best with this type of support we're going to be adding to our bodice. What I also do is I'll go in and from those markings, I'll just take my boning. So I'm going to mark from here where I made that slash down, and then I'm going to cut. Kind of put my finger there and then go in and cut. And I do it for each of these. I go in and then I cut, so that I end up with these strips. And what you're also going to notice is a lot of times, because it's spent so much time rolled up, it cuts curled up, which kind of makes it difficult to sew. So what I recommend is if you put your iron on a synthetic setting or a light setting and you just gently press them down, you'll be able to straighten it out a little bit, and that helps with applying it to your bodice. If it's curled, it kind of makes it difficult to take it through the machine. Okay? You can also, again, when we're talking about different kinds of techniques, you can go and take tiny pieces of remnants that you have from your lining, and I would say about 1 inch, fold them down and use them as what we call support, so that the boning, when you cut the boning, you'll notice that there's little bits of raw edges that poke out of the plastic, and sometimes it can make holes in the garment. You can do one or two things. You can go in and you can add that sort of fastening to it, that fabric shield, so to speak. Or what I like to do is I just take a lighter, but you got to be a little bit more fluid to it. Don't just like go burning up your stuff. But you just take that lighter and you just gently burn down the tips. And I do that normally when I'm trying to fasten down ribbon and those kinds of things. I just very quickly just take the lighter and hit to the top so that those raw edges aren't going to show, and then poke through my fabric. So once you have all the pieces that you're going to use, you're going to go in and sew it just all around. Okay. So like I said, I've taken my boning, I'm making sure that it's directly in the middle, and I've anchored it down with my sewing machine. And I just put that stitch length up a little bit. I've anchored it with my sewing machine, and I'm just gonna slowly back stitch it a little and just walk it lift that again, come down. I also say to do it slowly because the boning can actually, if you go through too quickly, it can actually break the needle. So you want to make sure you're using a heavy duty needle, and just make sure you go nice and slow. Okay. So this is the seam that we get. And we just do this on all 4 of our seams. So we do in that princess seam, we do it on those 2 center back seams, and we see what it looks like. So we're done at the machine, and this is what it looks like when we have all of our boning pieces in place. And as you can see, we're a little bit away from the top area and a little bit away from the bottom area, and that's just to ensure that we can connect our remaining pieces without the boning interfering with it. So I'm just going to flip it to the other side so you get to see what it looks like on the other side. What I didn't mention is when you're going up into the boning area, just like with any curve, you might want to make sure you go in and just clip those seams down, clip the edges of the curve down. That way things sit a little bit more flat, and it makes it just a little bit easier to go around the curve, especially when you're applying that boning. Okay, so again, this is what we look like on this side. We have our boning in place, and we have our waist there. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Videos are uploaded weekly covering dressmaking, fashion, lectures, and more.